Graphically, let's estimate the intervals on which the function y equals f at x is increasing and decreasing. Notice the instructions say estimate, so that means we might get an answer slightly different from our neighbor if we sat and did it independently. So I want to figure out where is this function increasing and where is it decreasing. Notice if I start tracing at the far left, assuming it would keep doing its same thing off the screen. Notice if I do that, this function starts off increasing, right? Then it decreases, then it increases. So I actually have a region where it increases, then it decreases, then it increases. The question is, how do we write this answer? And the way we write the answer, first of all, is we are only going to write our answer in terms of x. So we won't say from point to point. We will just say from an x value to another x value. So this function is actually going to be always increasing till I get to right here. Well, what x value is right here? Well, I'm going to call it -1. So this function is increasing for all of the x's that are less than -1. I won't use equal to because that's its maximum, and at that maximum it's actually neither increasing nor decreasing. It's also increasing over on the other tail from this minimum point forever on. What are those x's? Well, let's see. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you say? We'll call it 4. So it's increasing using every x bigger than 4. So we'll say x bigger than 4. And then to be a little bit cleaner with our notation, I'm going to use the union symbol. And if I want to really make some good notation, I might say the set of x such that all of that occurs. In a moment, I'm going to use another notation after I do decreasing, one that you should become familiar with as the course goes along, and depending upon your instructor, you might need to use immediately. To do decreasing, however, we're going to be decreasing between this location and this location, and again, we're only concerned about the x's, and so these are the x's between -1 and 4, and we would write that as x is between -1 and 4 using a compound inequality in that form. And we'd have the set of x such that that occurs. Now, many of you will have instructors who will expect you to use interval notation. And to use interval notation, what we are going to do is we are going to always set up the left, in this case the left x, comma, the right x, and then we will either use a parenthesis or a bracket, and we can mix and match. And the question is, what do we use? Well, you will always use a parenthesis when you have infinity. So if we happen to have -infinity on the left, we'll always use the parenthesis. If we actually had infinity on the right, we'd use a parenthesis. Otherwise, you use a parenthesis as well when you don't actually reach the point, when you do not have equality. So in these cases, I don't have any equality, so I'm going to use parentheses. Had I had equality, I would use a bracket on a finite endpoint where I have the equality. So let's take a look at what I mean. I'm going to do the decreasing first because it's a little bit easier. -1 to 4, if I were using interval notation, I would put the left endpoint first, -1, the left x, the right endpoint second, and I would use parentheses on both since I do not have equality. Now for the increasing one, I have two pieces. Notice the union. So I'm going to have two intervals. To do the interval of x less than -1, that means that the farthest left we would go, if we could actually get there, would be -infinity. That would be left forever, comma, and our right endpoint is -1. And again, parentheses due to the fact that I don't have equality. Then the second interval would start at 4 and go to all of the larger x values forever, so that would be 4 to infinity, and again parentheses. And since I have two intervals, I'll again use the union symbol. So again, this first one was inequality notation. The second is interval notation. And again, if you haven't used interval notation, you might want to talk to your instructor about whether they expect you to use that, and if you're not familiar with it, maybe get a little additional help.